Movies of 1999.
So, welcome everybody to episode 21 of the Movies of 1999, a podcast where we watch a movie from 1999 each week as selected by Bingo Machine. My name is Jason Hutchins.
I'm Craig Talbot.
And Craig, you're back from being unwell, so no more AI replacements.
Oh, the AI replacement. Less said about that, the better, I think, Jason. The only good thing about that AI replacement was hearing it get the better review, which was hilarious.
It never did.
Anyway, it did. Anyway, that's a matter of opinion.
So in this week's episode, we'll be talking about Gods and Monsters, which is the movie that the Bingo Machine selected last week, number 51. And that will be followed by Arlington Road with a nice little intermission in between, courtesy of Craig. Don't forget to hang around for the end of the episodes where we'll cut live to the dropping of the bingo ball this week to find out what movie we'll be talking about in next week's show. So I think that's all the things I normally talk about, isn't it? So without further ado, let's go over to ChatGPT for a synopsis of Gods and Monsters.
Gods and Monsters is a poignant drama that delves into the final days of James Whale, the director of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. As Whale, portrayed masterfully by Ian McKellen, grapples with declining health and haunting memories of his past, he forms an unexpected bond with his handsome gardener, played by Brendan Fraser. This relationship unearths profound reflections on life, art, and loneliness, brought to life by Lynn Redgrave's memorable performance as Whale's devoted housekeeper. The film beautifully explores themes of memory, regret, and redemption, making it a compelling watch.
So, Craig, what did you think about this movie?
I think you need to tell us why you picked these two movies together.
Yeah, I forgot to do that. Okay, so Gods and Monsters, the reason why I chose that movie is, come on, it's Gandalf. How are you not going to choose a movie with Gandalf in it? You know, so I did see this at some time in the last 25 years as well, quite a while ago, probably on TV. And why did I pair that with Arlington Road? Now, Arlington Road I had never seen, bit of an obscure one, and I have no idea why I paired it with Arlington Road. Why do you think I might have paired it, Craig?
Yeah, this one you had me completely stumped. There is, funnily enough, a link with Arlington Road and Mumford that I found.
Yes, because the same actor is in it. What's her name?
Hope Davis is
Hope
in both
Davis, that's
movies.
right,
Yep.
yes.
But I for the life of me, can't see the similarity between these. To be honest, this one should have been paired with Enemy of the State. That would have made a lot more sense.
For sure. But look, when you're trying to pair 104 movies together and come up with a reason for each of them, sometimes you're going to have movies that just have to be paired because there's nothing left on the list. And that's probably what happened in this case. But anyway, what did you think of Gods and Monsters?
I absolutely loved this movie.
It was great, wasn't it?
This is a fantastic movie.
Now,
I think...
we didn't have a movie night this week because of the COVID going around, but we did a watch party. So we all chatted on Discord while watching the movie, and there were quite a few of us, and I think we all enjoyed it. Some people gave it 5 stars. So
yeah, I can't remember what I gave it in my Letterboxd review, but I would be very close to 5 stars if I didn't give it 5 stars. I think the performances of the three main actors, Ian McKellen, Brendan Fraser, and Lynn Redgrave. I mean, Ian McKellen is, I know you called him Gandalf, but he deserves a lot more than that. He's absolutely outstanding in this movie. He's clearly drawn heavily on his Shakespearean roots as an actor in this movie. He's just outstanding. There was a point there where you sent a text to all of us and said, "Where have you all gone? No one's commented for ages." And the reality was we were all spellbound by Ian McKellen's
that whole sequence,
performance in that particular section of the movie. To give you an idea, this movie has a 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's one of the highest of the movies that not the highest of the movies that we're going to talk about this week, by the way, but one of the highest of the ones that you've selected, and an 82% score by users, which I think is unfair because I honestly think this is a fantastic movie. Definitely would be in my top 5. I think I said top 10 on the movie night, but I reckon it would be in my top 5 for the year.
And this was the first time you'd ever seen this movie, isn't it?
I think it's the first time I've watched it all the way through. I think I've
Right.
seen parts of it before.
Okay.
As is my want. When they're on TV, I often drop in and watch a bit of a movie and then
Right, a little bit of it.
back in the
yes.
old TV days, This movie only had a budget of $10 million, and it actually was a flop financially because it only made $6.5 million. Very sad because it won 38 awards of various different types, including one Oscar for the screenplay based on other people's materials, which in this case was Christopher Bram's Father of Frankenstein book. Bill Condon won the Oscar for the screenplay. It got 33 nominations for other awards. So it won 38 and was nominated for 33, which I'm pretty sure, I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure is the highest number of any movie that we've seen so far in terms of nominations and wins. I think Bill Condon did a fantastic job of directing this movie. Did you know, Jason, I came across this in an interview with him earlier in the week, and then I confirmed it on IMDb. This movie was shot in something like 24, 25 days.
Yeah.
And a lot of that Bill Condon said came down to the professionalism of the actors involved. So the 3 main actors, Ian McKellen, Brendan Fraser, and Lynn Redgrave particularly, they shot the whole movie in 24 days. So the filming began on June 30th and finished on July the 28th. So they must have had some breaks in between there. But just an incredible movie to be done in such an incredibly short period of time. Apparently, they were just like, the director, I think, described it as just being incredibly efficient. They just, went from one scene to another. So basically, a lot of these scenes, unlike our mate Stanley Kubrick with his 92 takes, a lot of these were done in 1 or 2 takes.
Yeah, I can imagine
a lot of the scenes. So, just incredible. I just thought this movie was really well done. I like the subject, the actual story, the actual subject of the movie, to me, wasn't the important thing in this movie. It was really the performances. It was a good story, but it was,
Yeah, I love the story and I love the subject. The whole idea that this is based on a true story as well. The director of these movies, like Bride of Frankenstein and things like that, and recreating those scenes from the movies, that was all very interesting too.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting movie. Interestingly, the character of, according to the author Christopher Bram, when he was interviewed about it, the character of Clayton Boone is just a completely fictitious. He added that into the book to, I guess, to drive the story or to give Jimmy Whale someone to sort of talk to drive the story along.
Yeah, but also obviously that was a whole Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. That was the whole point of the movie, wasn't it? He was able to ultimately rescue him in the end as well.
Yeah.
Or to help him to grieve, but of course it then ends very tragically. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So the real life Whale did suffer from strokes towards the end of his life. And he was a painter, and a lot of his paintings were actually in the movie, and some of them are shown in the making of on the DVD, which obviously we didn't see that version. They were loaned to the film by a collector who owned the films. There's also a lot of his drawings as well in the film, about 5 of them in the movie. Again, were loaned to the production. As I was saying, Whale suffers from strokes towards the end of his life, and he was actually found dead in his pool in the end. There were rumours that this was a homicide, but evidence only pointed to suicide. There was allegedly a note, which is on Wikipedia, which I didn't actually get a chance to read, but apparently there was a note from him at the end of his life. And then allegedly. It's interesting, the reviews of this movie, Roger Ebert, I kind of felt he only gave it 3 out of 4. And he said Gods and Monsters is not a deep or powerful film, but is a good-hearted one.
Well, that's completely wrong, isn't it? It
is
both deep and powerful.
God, look at it. Look at this. We're agreeing with each other this week, Jason. After the debacle of last week, you arguing with ChatGPT, there we go.
Like the whole final 10 minutes of this movie is deep and powerful, far out. how could he say something like that?
I can't see how you could say it wasn't deep and powerful. I'm not, like, if I was going to describe this movie, I would say it was both deep and powerful. The scenes with Brendan Fraser and Ian McKellen, where where he's sharing his life story, particularly the stuff about the First World War, those scenes in the First World War. Bear in mind, they did those scenes of the First World War stuff in that 25 days. And some of those scenes took forever. Took ages to do because they took a long time to set up. All of those scenes where all the soldiers are lying.
Yes.
All of that stuff. So all of that done. All of that was done. All of those trenches scenes, all of that stuff was done in the 25 days. Apparently, those scenes actually took a lot of the time, and yet they are not the most. Well, they are important, but they're not the most important scenes. So a lot of the other scenes that we would have seen as being really central to the film were actually shot in very short amount of time. I have to say, Brendan Fraser is not an actor that, obviously because he hasn't been around for the last, 13, 14, 15 years, I think it is.
Not until The Whale, which is a fantastic movie. Darren
Yes,
Aronofsky
so I'm
movie,
told.
but,
I haven't seen it, but I'm told he's excellent in that. And there are reasons why he hasn't been in the public eye for quite some time.
That's right, yeah.
It's quite serious ones. And look, one of the comments from one of the users was, wow, Brendan Fraser can act, and he can.
Yeah, he's great in this movie, and he really showed...
absolutely outstanding. Yeah.
He really showed that he was... And this was coming from a period where he was in the... Well, actually, I might have to bleep that one.
Yeah, I know. I was wondering why you said
that. But also George of the Jungle, and I think there was... What was the other one he's in? Which might also have to be beeped. I don't remember if that's on my list. But he was in all these movies where he was playing a very light-hearted, romantic comedy kind of character.
That's right.
And just to add this, pretty much in the same period of his career, just to show that he's not a himbo. I mean, he can act.
That's right.
And I think just a year or two afterwards, maybe even the following year in 2000 when I was in London, we went and saw him perform in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Right.
And it was Brendan Fraser and Frances O'Connor. And we've seen Frances O'Connor, I think, in an earlier movie this year.
Yeah.
And that was, like, I hadn't seen Gods and Monsters, but, I mean, the guy was a very fine actor, yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that he left acting for a period of time is a great loss to the profession, to be honest, because he's an outstanding actor. I thought Lynn Redgrave, who, famous name.
So she was Hannah.
She was excellent. She was Hannah. She was excellent as well. I mean, the other actors in the movie, there was nothing wrong with any of their performances. They were all very good, but those are the three main characters. I mean, if you focus just on those three, that you've got the movie in essence. And I think that's why it worked, and possibly why they were able to do it so quickly.
It's really... almost like putting on a play, almost like the movie that we saw a few weeks ago, The Winslow Boy.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah, where it's a small cast and only a few locations,
As you said, I think the references to The Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's Monster, Frankenstein and all of those movies by Jimmy Whale. He mentions the movies quite a few times. The title comes from one of the lines in Bride of Frankenstein, To a New World of Gods and Monsters, which is said by Dr. Pretorius in the 1935 movie. Brendan Fraser is actually an Oscar winner, and there are obviously two Oscar nominees. I was surprised to learn that Ian McKellen hasn't won an Oscar. He must have got pretty darn close for this. He was nominated for this, as was Lynn Redgrave, I believe. Just for my classicist friends in the audience, when Clay is escorting James out of the rain at the party, James tells him, "Oh, that is too solid flesh would melt." This is obviously a quote from Act 1, Scene 2 of Hamlet, a play which a friend of mine and our friend David, we are both familiar with because we studied it in Year 12 at some length, and I still remember it today, which is fairly scary. So in that scene, the character is expressing his desire to commit suicide and simply turn into nothingness, which becomes a theme of Jimmy Whale's life.
A bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
That whole sequence at the party where it started to rain, like just the movie maker's point of view watching that, I thought, God, this sequence would be so hard to do the continuity in because their clothes were getting very visibly wet. But they weren't
Yes.
they weren't getting soaked. They were just having droplets of rain on. And I thought, if you had to shoot a second take and match it up with a take that you'd shot earlier, it would be a nightmare. But hearing you describe how quickly they filmed it, they probably just did it all in a single take, didn't they?
I mean, thinking about that whole garden party, there were quite a number of different takes, like splits and stuff.
Yeah.
So it would have been hard to do in one take, even in the rain scene.
I mean, just when they're standing under
yeah.
the umbrella and they're getting visibly wet. Yeah.
It's quite possible that they did it in one or two takes, quite honestly.
Because I did not notice the wetness change position or anything like that. Anyway. I'm getting into the weeds a bit.
You are, but that's okay. That's what this podcast is all about, I think. Look, I would highly recommend watching this movie. It's available on, what did we watch it on, Prime Video? Is that
That's right? Yeah, available on Prime. It sort of, I would say it blew us all away. Like it came out of nowhere. We weren't expecting to watch such a fantastic movie.
No.
And yeah, I'm glad that we got to it. And number 51, it almost wasn't on the A list by the looks of it.
Right. Yeah, look, it's one of those movies that's on the A list. And when you compare it with like the rubbish that we discussed last week, the school play that's called, I don't even want to say the title because it irritates me. The kids at my school could have written a better story than that one last week. Anyway, moving on. This is a proper movie. This is a good movie. It's worth watching. Worth taking the time out to watch.
Yeah,
I think I'm 47 movies in at this point, so maybe I'm getting a little bit jaded. But
no, it's great.
Yeah.
It's not jaded if you get blown away by a movie like this, So yeah, no, it was a fantastic film, and I'm glad we got around to it. And just a pity that we were all in separate locations, but it was nice that we could watch it together and chat about it.
Yeah, I think the universal acclaim that everyone had for the movie was really, really, really interesting. That we all felt. I mean, the fact that we did all just go silent for a while there, and just watch the movie. That's like, to me, a measure of a good movie is how bored I am about halfway through, and I wasn't bored at all with this movie.
Yes.
I literally was enthralled.
Yeah, whether your phone comes out halfway through.
Yeah. For me, my phone addiction is coming to highlight this year, and look, I like with a lot of these movies, my phone comes out pretty early on, and this one was not the case. I have to say that both of these movies, actually, from this week, I found both of them quite compelling.
Yes,
both of
them. I would agree. I would agree, and we'll get to that soon. And I just want to reiterate, it was so clever how they used that theme of Frankenstein in this movie. To take what was a true story and to use that in such an effective way, I thought was very, very clever. And you don't often see that in a true story that has been adapted.
No, that's right.
Where they took such a big part of this person's life and made it a theme for their entire life. I thought that was very clever.
Well, Jimmy Whale is, of course, known for a number of movies. The two Frankenstein movies. Bride of Frankenstein is actually considered probably his best movie of the two. He's also known for The Man in the Iron Mask and a number of other. Actually, I've forgotten the one that he talked about in the movie Showboat. Is it Showboat?
I don't remember.
All of these movies are pretty well known. It does actually make me want to go back and watch some of these movies from 1930, like the 1930s, because there was a golden period in the 1930s, a bit like what we're talking about in this podcast, the 1999. There was a bit of a golden period as well in the 1930s where filmmaking pushed forward quite a long way from its early days. And it would be interesting to go back and watch some of these. I think at least one of his movies is in the top 100 of all time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Of all time.
I think Frankenstein is like number 87 or something like that, depending on what list you look at. But it's often said that Bride of Frankenstein is his best movie, which is the one that they talk about in this movie.
The Invisible Man. No, it's not Bride of Frankenstein. But yeah, I'd be interested to know what it is. But I guess the original Frankenstein would be considered a classic. No, that's number 610, so that can't be it.
There was an article that I read where it was in a top 100, but like these things are very subjective.
Yeah.
They're very
It's
subjective.
on somebody's top 100 list. Yes.
Yes, yeah,
I
that's
see
right.
what
It's
you
very
mean.
subjective. I don't know if that's necessary, but I was interested by Roger Ebert's review because like he mentions George of the Jungle for Brendan Fraser.
Right.
I think he was a bit critical of the movie. There's kind of I think he felt the movie was a bit slow and not compelling enough. But I don't quite understand that because this is like we've complained about movies feeling slow in this podcast. God knows I have. And this was not one that I noticed that at all. And considering I was not 100% in terms of my health, I still watched this and was, like I didn't look away from it, shall we say. Lying on my bed watching it with you guys. And I really feel the whole theme of Whale's late life and how he's struggling with the fact that he has a stroke and his brain's not doing what he wants it to do and he can't draw, he can't, he just can't focus on anything.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like the medication because that makes him feel dopey, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, for me, that resonated, obviously, having had a parent in a similar sort of situation recently, as you'd be aware, Jason, and having died recently, I kind of felt a little bit of that as well. So yeah, look, for me, I don't understand Roger Ebert's comment. As we said, I found this a very powerful, fascinating movie.
I wonder if there's an element of like the American point of view, because you have what really feels like a bit of an English movie, doesn't it? Even though it's set in Hollywood, but it does feel like that kind of production. And then you have this actor who's known for making movies like George of the Jungle, sort of appearing in the middle of the movie. Maybe it's just a reaction to that, like just feeling like this doesn't belong or something.
It's kind of odd, isn't it? It's a Hollywood movie, but it's not a Hollywood movie.
No, it doesn't feel like a Hollywood movie at all.
It actually did very well in terms of its awards with the British press and the British award system. So it did very well there, obviously because of Ian McKellen. Ian McKellen actually has his own website where he lists his movies and all the awards he's won for all the different movies that he's in. And there's got a long list here. So I actually read, if you get a chance, Jason, there's a fascinating thing. On his website, he actually has his original script from this movie where he makes notes against the actual script.
Okay.
I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with that, and it's actually quite fascinating. I actually found that really interesting. So he has, on his website, he has the script. I'm looking at the script now, and they have blue pages where they've made changes, and that he has all these little notes about, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say this instead.
Right.
Or like when he says something, he's sort of like made a note, for example, like Mr. Whale, it's such an honor. You're one of my favorite all-time directors. I can't believe I'm meeting you. And Whale is meant to say, no, I expect you can't. But the director has made the note gently teasing, but then Ian McKellen has made the note, make sure it's self-deprecating. I need to do that in a self-deprecating way.
Right.
And little things like there's, and you can see his method at work here because he's making all these little notes. There are literally notes all over this script. His handwriting is quite hard to read, but actually, funnily enough, Adobe Acrobat that I'm using to read it, he actually is able to, has attempted to, what's the word? What's it? Handwriting recognition? You're right. And the rush of emotion takes him by surprise. There's lots of little comments in the script along these lines. It's actually really fascinating.
Yeah.
How on earth the computer has managed to interpret this handwriting when I can barely read it is a testament to modern AIs, I think. But yeah, like it's actually quite fascinating. It's the first time I've actually seen a script like this.
Marked up in that way.
Marked up in that way by the actor. Like, you can see the amount of work he's put in. And where he changes a word, he scribbles out a word and changes a word.
Well, I think this was a role that he really identified with. It says that he felt very comfortable playing this role. He's also a gay actor.
Yeah, so, with a similar background.
With a similar background. So I think that, maybe that's part of the reason why he was so meticulous in his performance like that.
Yeah, I think he's meticulous anyway. He's just that kind of actor. But like a lot of these Shakespearean actors, they're very, 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 very careful in how they do things and in their performance. But yeah, look, it's just fascinating going through the script and just seeing how much effort he's put in there.
Yeah.
You're right about your comment about him being very comfortable with this. They both came from a Shakespearean system, him and Jimmy Wales.
That's right.
They're both homosexual, so they both, probably went through the same sort of prejudices and all that sort of stuff.
That's right, yeah.
And the same sort of, difficulties with lifestyle and all that kind of stuff that Hollywood would bring, I guess. Though in the 1930s, I would imagine it would have been more difficult. But
Well, I think it says that James Whale he was completely out of the closet in the 30s. Like he didn't keep it a secret at all, did he? He flaunted his.
I think he was still fairly discreet, as people were in those times, but he was known as. I think people were still fairly discreet about these things.
So only one step away from here is the X-Men and then Lord of the Rings for Ian McKellen. So I mean, this was kind of the beginning of a transition for him.
Yeah,
like only 1 or 2 years away from this performance, he was in these big blockbuster movies.
Yeah. And it's interesting. He's now remembered as you said, Gandalf, and yet
that's what my daughter said on the movie night. Yeah.
And look, I can accept that for a generation
he's not
of
allowed
children.
to be any other character.
No, like for a generation of children, particularly, he's Gandalf, and he will always be Gandalf. I mean, even I was reading The Hobbit to my class earlier in the year. We've been reading The Hobbit, and I must admit, there's a scene where Gandalf and Bilbo are talking and they're blowing smoke rings at each other. And that scene is I think it's in The Hobbit or in one of the early.
In the movies, it's in the first Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah, it's in the first Lord of the Rings movie as well, I believe. And Frodo, he does a similar thing with Frodo as well, actually. But anyway, the thing is, when I read that scene now, I always see Ian McKellen's Gandalf.
Yeah, it's very hard not to see Peter Jackson's movies.
So. Yeah, but nonetheless, Gods and Monsters is well worth checking out. I reckon I would put it on my list. I'd be happy to watch it again. That was a
rave review there. So we can hear the sultry sounds of some music approaching, which means it must be time for the highlight of the podcast, Craig's intermission.
Oh, thank you for saying it's the highlight, Jason. That's very kind of you. This week, I got my hands on a DVD. I had to buy the DVD of this movie, Jason. It cost me all of $5 and $3 delivery, actually from a guy locally here in Perth.
Okay.
Thankfully, so I managed to get it this week. We're going to be talking about Todo sobre mi madre, or All About My Mother, which is a film by Pedro Almodovar, which I have to be honest, I've been really looking forward to watching.
Yep.
It is a very high-rated foreign film, probably the highest-rated foreign film of the year. In fact, it won an Academy Award for Best Foreign Film. It won a Golden Globe for Best Foreign Film. And I'm pretty sure a BAFTA as well. I could be wrong on that. I know it won 3 major awards. I can't remember if I've written that down here, but yes, a BAFTA as well. Best BAFTA Award for Best Film, not in the English language, and also Best Direction BAFTA as well. So this movie is probably the highest rated movie that we have watched on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm pretty sure, because it's 98%.
Okay.
By critics and 93% audience score, which I think is the highest that we have seen so far. I would highly recommend this movie to anyone. This movie was made with a budget of around $5 million US. It was made in Spain, so it was budgeted slightly differently. It has, however, made about $67 million in box office worldwide, as far as I can tell. And this movie, like a lot of Pedro Almodovar's films, is based around the theme of motherhood. In many of his movies, the mothers are very important. They're usually fierce, passionate, and resourceful characters. And that's certainly the case in this movie, which was released in Spain in April 1999. It was the first of Almodovar's movies to compete at Cannes Film Festival, where he won the Best Director prize. And Why it didn't win a Palme d'Or, I don't know.
Do you know which movie did that year?
I didn't go down that rabbit hole, but I do know that it didn't. So it's a comedy drama film. It's actually quite a challenging film to watch because even though I watched a version which is subtitled in English, the characters, I don't know whether this is a Spanish thing or a Pedro Almodovar thing or what it is, but the characters speak incredibly quickly.
Right.
So it is like literally you blink and you've missed an entire subtitle.
I'd say that's a Spanish thing.
Yeah, it's extremely hard to follow unless you're focused and concentrated. I literally had to go back because I was doing something else at the same time, thinking, I can watch this and do something else at the same time. And then I was like, oh, no, I have to go back. So I ended up having to go back to the beginning and watch it actually several times before I got every single subtitle because some of them go past really quickly. And what is maybe 4 or 5 words in Spanish is like an entire sentence in English, you know? So interesting. It's got a bit of an Argentine connection as well. So the main character, played by Cecilia Roth, is actually from Argentina, as is she's the mother in this story. And it's written from, and so the movie is based around her point of view. She is Manuela, and she's an Argentine nurse. She oversees organ transplants at a hospital in Madrid. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of the hospital because I'll just butcher it. She's also a single mother to her teenage son, Esteban, who aspires to become a writer. And so the synopsis is essentially that on Esteban's 17th birthday, they go to see a streetcar named Desire. There's a scene where his mother is standing in front of the poster for the movie, and she's actually wearing the same jacket and whatever as the actress in the play, who she gets to know. And it's anyway. The upshot is that Esteban goes chasing for an autograph and gets hit by a car and killed while chasing after the actress Huma Rojo for her autograph. And so his heart is then used as a heart transplant for a man in another town of another part of Spain, and she ends up going back to Barcelona because of her grief and just wanting to get away. As she said, every time something happens to me, I run away. So she had originally run from Barcelona to Madrid when she found out she was pregnant with her son, and then she ran back to Barcelona after he died. And she's looking for her Esteban's father, who is a transgender woman named Lola. And Manuela had kept that a secret from her son. And she reunites with her friend Agrado, another transgender sex worker. I don't know if the word transvestite is a politically correct word anymore. No. I'm not sure. But
not politically correct.
No, I guess not. But they're transgender. And she also makes several new friends, including a young nun played by Penelope Cruz, who actually did quite a number of movies, along with Antonio Banderas with Pedro Almodovar. I'm remembering this is the 1990s, so they were, in the movie, they're actually referred to as transvestites, so I know that.
Sure, yep.
Yeah. So, and really, really very, and the character of Nina Cruz, who is sort of Huma Rojo's co-star and lover, but she has problems with drug addiction, so Huma ends up hiring Manuela to be her personal assistant because she does a good job of helping her manage Nina and her drug addiction. She's also in the play. Anyway, it's quite a complicated story, and it's interesting because it's, other than the transgender characters, everyone else is pretty much female. There's only 2 male parts in the entire movie, Esteban, her son, and there's also the father of Penelope Cruz, who goes for walks with his dog. Or his dog takes him for a walk because he has Alzheimer's and he doesn't really recognise anyone. Again, a slightly poignant point. I found that quite poignant as well, having dealt with that recently with my own parents. But it deals with the issues of AIDS, obviously transgender, gender identity issues, homosexuality, faith, all of these sorts of things. It's
all really big issues, and
Big issues.
Mm.
Yeah. It sounds like a really serious movie, but it's not. It's
comedy,
quite funny.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. It's quite the way the movie ends, I was a little bit surprised by. A lot happens in this movie, and it takes a bit to absorb. It is probably a movie I need to go back and watch again just to sort of understand completely everything that was going on. As I said, because they're speaking so fast,
Yes.
and the subtitles are flashing at you so quickly, it's easy to miss stuff. But it's basically about love, parenthood, friendship, all of these sorts of things. The film, Pedro Almodovar dedicated the film to every actress who has ever played an actress and to his mother. His mother had actually died recently as well. It is very much a female-driven movie. So even obviously the transgender characters are playing female roles, I guess, in that sense. And so it received a lot of awards in its home country. Very, very highly thought of movie. Probably one of the best movies of this year.
Yeah, I remember this being huge at the time as well, watching the movie show with David and Margaret. And I think at the Luna in Leaderville, the little independent cinema that we used to go to a lot, I think that used to be plastered with All About My Mother posters, and I think they must have screened the movie quite a bit,
Yeah, look, I know I've gone on for a bit about this movie, but it really is one of the best films of the year. This would be one I would probably put in my top 10 as well.
Oh, wow. 2 in your top 10.
Well, it's a very powerful movie. And I mean, it does connect with the previous movie a bit. Look, I would highly recommend watching this movie. It's difficult to watch because of the themes and stuff that happens in it, and also because the language is so fast.
Yeah.
If, even just trying to keep up with it was quite difficult. But I know I've watched Almodovar's movies before, and they always do speak very quickly. So, but most of his other movies, or the other movies of his that I have seen, more comedic.
Yes.
This is much more of a dark comedy.
This one was originally on my A list. I think maybe we discussed it in our first episode, but I just chose.
I'm not sure.
I had a couple of movies. I had a couple of documentaries and a couple of foreign language movies on my A list originally, but I just decided in the end to focus on Hollywood and Western cinema. So it is what it is, but it would have been on my A list if I'd broadened the...
Yeah, I honestly think this is one of the best movies that I've watched this year. It is one of those ones I would happily go back and watch again, even though it's quite a difficult subject.
Well, I checked my spreadsheet because I did have it on there, and I had gotten a copy of this movie because it was originally on my A list. And you're right, it has the highest critic score out of everything on my list on Rotten Tomatoes, apart from one movie, which is Toy Story 2.
Is that right?
Toy Story 2 has a critic score of 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, is that right? I don't remember what I was talking about that. But isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So there you go.
Look, I think this is a far better movie than Toy Story 2.
I do have a copy of it, and I think I will, based on what you've said just now, I think I will watch it this weekend.
I would strongly recommend watching it, Jason. It's a hard movie to watch. It's a sad and funny movie at the same time, but there's the character of Agrado, and I'm sorry, I don't know who exactly the person is who played that character. I didn't look that up, but that character actually becomes quite a central character she's one of the transgender characters, and her character becomes quite central in the movie. I thought her performance and her description of the life of a transgender worker was quite fascinating, actually, and sad, but but the way she overcomes that and goes like, "This is my life now," sort of thing. Look, I won't spoil the movie too much for you. I would highly recommend watching this.
I definitely will watch it. And thanks for the intermission, Craig. So, time to talk about our next movie, which is Arlington Road, and we'll go over to ChatGPT for a synopsis.
Arlington Road is a gripping thriller that centers on Michael Faraday, played by Jeff Bridges, a widowed college professor who becomes increasingly suspicious of his seemingly perfect neighbors, portrayed by Tim Robbins and Joan Cusack. As Faraday digs deeper, he uncovers a chilling conspiracy that puts his life and the lives of those around him at risk. This film, like Gods and Monsters, explores the theme of the hidden truths beneath the surface of everyday life. Both movies feature standout performances and unravel the complexities of human relationships and the dark secrets people harbor.
So, Craig, what do you think of the movie Arlington Road?
I really liked this movie as well. I honestly would have thought this would have been. I feel compared to some of the movies that we've watched on the A-list, this could have made the A-list. I understand it didn't because of the critic score, but I actually, yeah.
I think I agree with you. It definitely should have been on the A-list, and I think I just didn't know the movie, so I probably just went with the critic score when deciding what list to put it on. And it's crazy that a movie like Affliction has a higher critic score than Arlington Road, because this was a great movie, wasn't it?
Or even Existence, for
well,
example.
you're an outlier when it comes to Existence, I'm afraid.
Look, this is a considerably better. I actually would go as far as to say, I know we've watched a similar movie in Enemy of the State. I actually would have said this is actually a better movie than that. That is more of a blockbuster style thriller.
Yes, definitely.
Will Smith kind of thing. It's a good movie. It's a great movie. I enjoyed Enemy of the State. But this one, I think I wrote in my review, this is a great performances, but slightly disturbing and really quite disturbing, particularly at the end.
Tim Robbins has a way of playing a disturbing character, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's done that in a few movies.
I think we might have had a discussion about Tim Robbins, or maybe I had it with Simone, I can't remember, where you were a little bit critical of Tim Robbins, whereas I think he's one of the greatest actors that's ever lived.
Yeah.
But just based on his performance in this and Shawshank Redemption and a couple of other things I've seen him in, I really think he's an incredibly talented actor.
Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins are both fantastic in this movie. They give really good performances.
I must admit, it was hard watching Jeff Bridges in this movie after having watched The Big Lebowski only about a few months earlier, because they are so different.
Yeah.
They are so different. Yeah, but he actually... This movie, I'm going to say this. This is a hot take, Jason. I'm going to say this is the most powerful start to a movie this year. I can't think of another one which disturbed me so greatly as this one did. The first, 5 minutes of this movie?
With the little boy walking down the street.
Yeah, this was the most powerful opening to a movie I think we've watched.
Yeah. But also a very powerful ending. I mean, they nailed the opening and they nailed the ending. Yeah.
Yeah, and I look a lot of the in between too. Let's be honest. Look, I really rate this movie very highly.
Yeah, it's really good.
I actually watched it a couple of times because there was bits that I missed. I watched it again last night, and the movie was finished, and I was like, holy crap.
Yes.
It was just like one of those worlds. I reckon on the movie night, I would have just been sitting there in stunned silence.
Yes.
I don't reckon I would have said a word, because it would have just been like, I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
And then that last bit where he's standing on the thing and goes, I think he says something like boom. Tim Roberts says something like boom or whatever it is. Yeah. Turns to the camera and faces it and goes, well, boom, or whatever it was that he actually said. I can't remember exact words, but it was just the way he said it and the way he looked at the camera. And I was like, I really hate you right now. I love you as an actor, but I really hate you as a person. Yeah. I don't want to give this movie away too much either, because I think it's really worth watching.
No, it is. It is sort of domestic terrorism, and it's sort of in that period just before September 11, where I guess you could make a movie about domestic terrorists, where they were like white people who had problems with the government, based on things like the Oklahoma City bombing and stuff like that.
I mean, well, this is very heavily based on the Oklahoma City bombing, obviously. In the early drafts of the script, apparently, they explicitly mentioned the Oklahoma City bombing. But by the time they went to shooting, they'd actually changed the location to St. Louis. And there are references to an incident at a place called Ruby Ridge, which in this movie are named Copperhead Creek. I'm guessing they decided to rename things to not to confuse people, or to give conspiracy theorists a bit of a helping hand or something, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories around this. I think we mentioned already that Hope Davis is in another movie that we've seen, Mumford.
Yep. Yeah, she was good, wasn't she? And Joan Cusack.
She was good in Mumford,
well.
and she was good in this. Yeah. Joan Cusack, I'm pretty sure we've seen in previously. What she was in Straight. No, that's a different actress, isn't it? Anyway, we've seen her before. It's the little write-up that I saw, I think it's from The Guardian, said that Arlington Road is an intelligent, insidiously plotted Hitchcockian thriller directed in souped-up, modern, expressionistic style.
Joan Cusack was in our 100%er movie, Toy Story 2. She played the cowgirl.
Fair enough. And a study of the bland face of evil culminates in an all too plausible attempt at domestic terrorism. This one actually won Aaron Kruger, who was the screenwriter. It won him a fellowship from the Academy in 1996. So it's called the Nicol Fellowship for the script. And yeah, I mean, it's a very good script. I think it's the story is one of the better movies that we've seen this year.
So why did it sink without a trace? I mean, I didn't even remember this movie when I was putting together my list.
Well, interestingly, Jason, it cost $31 million to make, but it made $41.1 million at the box office. So it's actually considerably more successful than
a lot of the other
Gods and Monsters.
Yeah.
A lot of other movies that we've watched. It certainly made its money back. It's only beaten this week by All About My Mother. So it did very well, actually. It only got 5 nominations for awards. Mark Pellington's not a very well-known director. He certainly wasn't at this time. He's mostly known for music videos and TV series and that sort of stuff. He's done a lot of music videos.
Yeah.
Like, think of a famous band, and he's probably done a music video for them.
Well,
basically looking.
There's quite a few good directors who came from music videos.
Yeah, this year that's been a bit of a theme of the year, hasn't it? Directors that have come from music videos. The screenplay was excellent. The music and cinematography. Bobby Bukowski was the cinematographer. Composer was Angelo Badalamenti, which I feel like we've mentioned before.
Yes, the Straight Story. He's the Twin Peaks guy, so he collaborates with David Lynch quite a lot.
Right, yeah, okay. And
Angelo Badalamenti.
Badalamenti, yeah. Cool name. Hopefully we get to say that again before the end of the year.
Talking about cool names, why was Jeff Bridges' character called Michael Faraday? Because all our electrical engineers in the audience would know he's like the father of electricity. Like,
that's right. Yes, Faraday. Yes. I don't think just
was there a reference there, or like he didn't
I don't know.
have anything to do with electricity?
I think so. Well, he was a history professor, so I don't think so. There wasn't really much to do with electricity in the movie. I think it was just a cool name that they picked. Michael Faraday, yes, and his son as well.
His son,
Faraday.
Grant Faraday, who, like, it took me a while. I'm like, who is that little kid? But it's the little kid who's in the Russell Crowe movie where he's, like what's the one where he's a Roman centurion?
Oh, okay, yeah. Gladiator.
Gladiator, yeah.
Okay.
So he's the little boy from Gladiator.
Yeah, he did look familiar. Yeah.
Gladiator was a couple of years after this, I think.
The children in this movie, the acting from the children was actually very good.
Yeah,
the two child characters.
Exactly.
Was actually excellent. I thought the FBI agent played by Robert Gossett was very, very good. Again, I'm still probably struggling with the way the movie ended, so it was kind of like...
It was such an unexpected... Like, it is totally not a Hollywood ending, is it?
No. I really
take
felt
it right up to the line. Right up to the line.
I really felt... This is one of those ones where the movie ended and I was like, oh, come on, this is not fair.
And it is just a conspiracy. Like, the whole movie is a conspiracy theory because he mentions a previous case where it was a lone wolf kind of terrorist act. And then, the way that they ended up crazy.
Based around the idea of, that's actually what happened with the Oklahoma City bombing, is they ended up blaming it on one guy.
Yeah.
And there's been theories flying around that he couldn't just have been one person, that he must have got help from somewhere. Again, very, very similar to the Oklahoma City bombing. So very much around that. The references in the movie to a larger conspiracy going on. I think Joan Cusack, there's a point in this movie where she speaks to Hope Davis, who's on the phone, and there's just this little sign. There's just this little sign from her of her, like, she can be quite a creepy character when she wants to be.
Yeah.
And there's a little sign of that in that scene, and I was like, oh my God, you are terrifying.
She hasn't really played creepy characters before, has she? Like, I was thinking exactly that when I watched that scene around the phone booth.
I'm sure
like,
there's a couple of movies
she's really
that are
creepy. She could be
Yeah.
a really evil.
I'm sure
character.
there is. I'm sure there is a couple of movies where she does play evil characters, but I don't know the timeline compared to this movie. I can't remember exactly. But Tim Robbins, his performance is it's outstanding.
Yeah.
Look, honestly, Jeff Bridges' performance in this movie is absolutely fantastic.
One of his best movies. Yeah, I reckon.
I was going to say I honestly think it's the best movie I've seen him in. The Big Lebowski is an excellent movie, but I honestly think he's better in this in terms of how powerful his performance is.
Yeah, very, very good.
I mean, his character in Big Lebowski, he just sort of has to idle the way through the movie.
Yeah.
But this one, he gets to really perform. And I thought, particularly his face when he opens the boot of the car at the end.
God.
All of that. That's still sticking in my head right now.
Yeah.
So I can't really get rid of that.
We don't want to spoiler it too much because everyone who's
I
listening
know.
should go and watch this movie if they haven't seen it.
It is really, really fantastic. There was apparently an alternate ending featuring a scene where Grant Faraday figures out his father's fate based on Oliver Long's strange behaviour towards him, but it was cut because they thought it was too long. So they decided to.
That would have been.
They decided to stick with the original ending.
That would have been a bit unrealistic, I think.
Yeah.
This is kind of like these days. You'd almost use the word like talking about this movie. It's almost like a movie about gaslighting in a way, because I was thinking that throughout because Tim Robbins and Joan Cusack play this all-American, couple.
Exactly.
And they are constantly gaslighting their neighbour, Jeff Bridges, who is beginning to suspect there's something a bit wrong about them. Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because when you've seen the ending of the movie and then you go back and think about the earlier parts of the movie.
All their behaviour at the beginning,
it actually makes a lot more sense. But it's not until you get to the end that all of it really starts to make sense. And you're like, if only I'd seen that at the beginning. It's like,
But it's quite brave of them to end the movie like that because it is not a Hollywood ending. It's not an ending that makes you feel good about the way that things have gone. Yeah. So.
And I think this is a 1999 movie in that sense.
In that sense, yeah.
Yep. And I also think maybe that's why not a lot has been said about it since, because maybe people walked out of the cinema feeling pretty uncomfortable, pretty disturbed. And then, with all of the stuff that's happened in 2000 and
2001,
so on, with the terrorism and all that kind of stuff, where that became such an emphasis.
Yes.
Maybe this movie just was felt a bit on the nose, I guess. I'm going to give you a factoid just to change the subject slightly. So early in the film, Bridges is showing a bombing slideshow to his class where he describes a bombing incident that occurred in St. Louis at the Federal Roosevelt building carried out by the fictitious bomber Ian Scobie. The photo in the slideshow is actually of the Khobar Towers movie bombing in Saudi Arabia, which occurred in 1996. But Bridges' description is based on the Oklahoma City bombing of 1995, including the rented truck and the destruction of the daycare center. Obviously, no. It's interesting that IMDb, where I got this from, went to the extent of saying this. In fact, no such St. Louis attack ever took place, and there was never a Roosevelt Federal building in St. Louis. The fact that they felt that they needed to put that sentence in just to sort of stop the conspiracy theorists, I think. There's another interesting factoid. Do you remember the car chase kind of scene towards the end of the movie? So the actual crash where it crashes into the bus was unplanned.
Oh, okay.
It was meant to go around the bus and continue on and all that kind of stuff. But then the collision occurred and the car trunk spun open, and in the car trunk was like these big bright blue sandbags, which you can see very, very quickly if you're looking for them.
Oh, okay.
You'd have to go back and look though. But they had to cut those scenes really quickly to try and hide the sandbags from everyone. Because they'd weighted the car basically to make it behave in a different way. So
they weight the car and put more weight on the back tires so that it can slide around corners.
Yeah, it's probably so that they didn't. Yeah, and so the car is less damaged in subsequent shots if you look carefully because it hadn't hit the bus.
Talking about continuity, yeah.
Yeah, continuity issues there, but it's interesting. So conspiracy theorists have, as I said, pointed to the fact that in the Oklahoma bombings, there seems to be more to that story than there met the eye. And, originally it's just been blamed on this one guy with a big truck, with a big van, a big white van. And that was what Faraday was trying to tell his students. Look, I think this is a very clever movie. And for Hollywood, I think this is a really interesting movie that they actually had the guts to tell this story.
Yeah, definitely.
And that the studio and everyone let them do it, quite frankly.
That was the 90s for you. Yeah, they were taking risks.
So this is a really good week, I feel. This is probably...
Well, we've had 2 top 10 movies, and then Arlington Road sounds like it might be in... Not your top 10, but maybe...
I would probably put this maybe in my top 20 from this year.
Well, there you go.
I rated it pretty highly.
This would have to be our best week this year so far, yeah.
I think, I liked Enemy of the State. I thought that was a clever movie, but I like this movie more just because it's more true to its story. And the characters don't get in the way of this story as much as Will Smith does in Enemy of the State. It's like this one, Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins in particular. I think their performances really make this movie, obviously, because they're so key to this movie.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think the performances in this movie are stronger than if we were to compare it with Enemy of the State.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And I'm kicking myself it wasn't on my A-list, given that it's such a good example of a 90s movie, as we've discussed. But that was Arlington Road. And let's cut live now to the movie night for the dropping of the bingo balls. And we'll find out the 2 movies that we'll be talking about next time, or this time next week. So over to you, future Jason. Okay, so here we are at the movie night. It's a small one this week because the plague is going around and everyone's off sick. Will is our guest spin-up. Mix him up, Will. Oh, he's selecting... Oh, no, you were right. And he's selected, and what number is it? It's out?
17.
Number 17, a good number there. And what could it be? Let me check my spreadsheet. So number 17 is The Insider.
You go public and 30 million people hear what you gotta say. Nothing, I mean nothing, will ever be the same again.
Now, the work we did here is confidential, not for public scrutiny, any more than our one's family matters. We're very serious about protecting our interests.
He's got something to say, he wants to say it, I want it on 60 Minutes.
Maybe for the audience, it's just voyeurism, something to do on a Sunday night, and maybe it won't change a thing. And people like myself and my family are left hung out to dry, used up, alone.
What does this guy have to say
Now, don't be paranoid, Jeff.
that threatens these people?
That isn't cigarettes are bad for you.
Who is this?
They have no right to hide behind a corporate agreement. He can talk, we can air it.
The worst kind of an organized smear campaign against a whistleblower.
Shoplifting, failing to pay child support.
They can paint everything with that brush. What are you going to do now? You're going to finesse me, lawyer me some
Mike.
more? Try Mr. Wallace.
If we aired this segment,
I was told, don't talk. Mind my own business.
we could be a grave risk.
We're doing this with or without you, Lowell.
Are you a businessman or are you a newsman? He's only the key witness in the biggest public health reform issue in U.S. history. Does he go on television and tell the truth? Yes. Is it newsworthy? Yes. Are we gonna air it? Of course not. Why? Because he's not telling the truth? No, because he is telling the truth. And the more truth he tells, the worse it gets.
You manipulated me into this.
I fought for you, and I still fight.
The American public need to know.
Jeffrey?
And you wish you hadn't come forward?
Dr. Wagon's deposition will be part of this record.
You wish you hadn't blown the whistle?
Do I think it's worth it?
I told the truth. It's valid and true and
These people, that's not the point whether you tell the truth or not.
And The Insider has been paired with Titus.
Wrong. They've Yes!
He was the proudest prisoner of the Goths, that we may sacrifice his flesh.
Victorious Titus, spare my firstborn son!
Religiously, they ask a sacrifice.
I'll find a day to massacre them all. Away with her.
The forest walks wide and spacious from rape and villainy.
This was thy daughter.
He that wounded her hath hurt me more than had he killed me dead.
The fall of an empire is nothing compared to the descent of a man.
I am revenge, sent from the infernal kingdom.
A sweet revenge! Now do I come to thee!
Go to the Goths and raise an army there. And in the Emperor's court there is a queen. Would murder.
Stop her!
For those who think revenge is sweet,
I shall grind your bones to dust.
taste this. From Tony Award-winning director Julie Taymor comes a feast of power, lust, madness, and the ultimate sacrifice of love. Academy Award winner Anthony Hopkins, Academy Award winner Jessica Lange, Tony Award winner Alan Cumming, Laura Frazier, Harry Lennox, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. Titus.
Welcome, my gracious lord.
Welcome all.
And there you go. They're the two movies that we'll be talking about next week. So that's us done for this week, Craig.
Yes, I think I've used up what little energy I have left, but hopefully I didn't sound too bad on the podcast.
No, you came across very well. And as usual, we'll leave the final word to Margaret and David, who will be chatting about Gods and Monsters. So until next time, it's goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Well, now to another film that draws from the universal horror pictures of the 1930s and also stars Brendan Fraser. The film is Gods and Monsters. This is a multi-layered, highly enjoyable film from Condon, marked by not only outstanding performances from Ian McKellen and Lynn Redgrave, but also from Brendan Fraser, who shows an intelligence and subtlety in his portrayal of a man who develops a compassion for his nemesis. Really one of the best films of recent times, don't you think, Dave?
I found Ian McKellen, as you say, quite excellent, and Brendan Fraser's very good in this too. I disagree with you about Lynn Redgrave. I thought she gave a really mannered, stagey performance as
I know a lot of people feel like that, but I don't at all.
But apart from that, I think it is very good. It's not at all what I expected when I heard that they were making a film about James Whale.
I'm giving it 4.5 stars. What about you?
I'm going to give it 4.